Hey there, and welcome to another Ignite Press book launch livecast. I am excited today because I have with us Wendy Cocke, who is the author of Making Flex Work, Defining Success on Your Own Terms. We're going to be bringing Wendy on in just a second. First, I just want to share with you that here at Ignite Press, we really take joy in bringing your message to the world. And so if you have an idea for a book, or you've got a manuscript written, or you have a book out there already somewhere, and you would like to see that book featured on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and Baker and Taylor and Apple iBooks and Google Books and every other place online, let's have a conversation. You can go join us at any time by going to ignitepress.us and scheduling a complimentary book consultation there, ignitepress.us. Okay, now to the main event. Wendy is an engineer by training, and she will tell you firsthand that makes it very interesting to go through the creative process of writing a book. But Wendy's book today is 99 cents on Amazon for the Kindle version, and Making Flex Work. First, Wendy's the founder of Engineering Leadership Solutions. She's got a passion for people and wants to see people succeed. And this book about making flexible work for you and your employer is, I think, incredibly timely. So let's bring Wendy on. Wendy, how are you today?
I am great. I'm so excited to be here, Everett.
Man, this is an exciting time, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I've got my book, you've got your book. It's all good.
Absolutely. So Wendy, before we dive too much into the book, tell us about yourself. But actually, before that, let me tell our watchers and listeners, if you have a comment or a question, please put that in the chat, and I'll bring it up on the screen, and we can talk about it, and we can bring your questions directly to Wendy. So please do that. All right, Wendy, first, tell us about you. Like, who are you? How do we get to this place?
Absolutely. So I am an engineer, like you said. I am a mother of two. I am a wife, and I have a mother and a grandmother who live next door to me. We refer to ourselves as the Rolling Circus. About a decade ago, I felt like I was succeeding at everything and failing at everything all at the exact same time. I have spent 20 years in R&D, manufacturing, and supply chain, big Fortune 100, Fortune 500 medical device companies. And I thought I understood what success looked like, and I didn't. When my son, my oldest, who's 12, when he was a baby, I just needed a relief. I just needed some help. And I went to my boss in this big company, and he said, absolutely, I will help you do that. But it's going to stall your career. There's nothing I can do about it. Why would you want to walk away from everything that you've built? You know, if you do this, you're never going to get promoted again. Sure, you might think you want flexibility, but think of all the things you're going to be giving up. It was in those moments that I realized that I didn't really want what everybody thought that I wanted. You know, I don't take no for an answer very well. I believe it's abbreviation for not yet. Maybe it's because I'm an only child. I had one of those dads who told his little girl she could be anything she wanted to be. I also come from a long line of strong, independent women. But I just felt like I could create something that was perfect in my mind. So I set off on a journey. It took me 11 months to be able to get part-time that first time. I dropped from 40 hours to 32, which doesn't seem like a lot to a lot of people. But the difference between full-time and 32 is way more than 8 in most cases. At that point, I was a junior engineer, single as individual contributor working on my own. And I thought I was done, and I didn't care. But what I found is because I was intentional with my time, and I used that strategic engineering mindset to be very intentional, I was able to move up. I quickly became a project leader, first one they'd ever had part-time. I became a people leader, the first manager the company had ever had part-time. Became an associate director, a director. I moved throughout the organization. And today, as the founder of Engineering Leadership Solutions, I'm able to do both technical consulting, management training, development, and now I get to add speaker and author to my list and really be able to help people.
Okay, so That's super interesting because so many people make giant sacrifices to gain the flexibility that you desire. And I mean, and that supposition there that yes, you can have flexibility, but you're going to sacrifice the career track. You're going to sacrifice this, like you put your whole career on pause. I think that's a common assumption. Um, and Wendy, can you share like how did you make that transition? So it took 11 months, and how did you get to the point where that you got them to completely buy into this kind of flexibility, but without destroying your career track?
Well, I will tell you, Everett, I did something that is not anything I would recommend. I kind of gave him an ultimatum. I pushed and pushed and pushed. And I had a leader who just couldn't wrap his head around doing something differently. And although I would never recommend this to anyone else, I took a very drastic approach and just simply asked him if I could talk to his wife and see how she was able to manage it all. Now, the reason I did that is I knew that his wife, as well as every other wife in the department for those leaders, they were all stay-at-home moms. So I asked him, I said, I feel like I'm drowning. I can't do anything else. Can I just call your wife and figure it out? And it stopped him in his tracks because he remembered his wife quitting. And it was in that moment that he said, well, and I said, right, I forgot she doesn't work. And he said, you're right. Let's figure out what we can do.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So we have your book. We've got Making Flex Work. Who'd you write it for?
Yeah, so really, I wrote it for anyone who feels like they're drowning in their quest to success. This might be a parent, a caregiver. It might even just be a person that bought one of those COVID dogs and doesn't want to go back to the office. There really is a way to have these conversations with your leader. Leaders historically have been able to write it off as one-off or emotional and not have to have a business discussion. But today, that's just not the case in business. And if you can, as the individual, reframe the question so that it isn't what I need, but what I need to deliver to the company and what I need in order to be successful for you, you can now move that as a business discussion and have strategy with those leaders, which I think is the language that they speak, right? I also wrote it for those leaders who know they need to do something differently and they just don't know what. The number of leaders that I spoke to at the start of the pandemic who reached out and called me and said, okay, so I know you've been doing this. How do we do this? They want to be successful. Those leaders that really just need a vocabulary and a framework so that they can ensure that the business happens. I wrote it for them too.
Okay. Now I'm kind of curious about this. We're in this time, like, does flex equal remote?
It doesn't have to. No. So when I think about flexible, there's lots of ways. So flexible is anything that is not a traditional sit at your desk for your job. So that could be remote, that could be hybrid, that could be part-time, it could be job share, it could be I want to work entirely from a different place in the world and be a part of that work environment that I've always been a part of. So it can be any of those things.
Okay, so now you discuss in your book the eval method. Can you touch on that?
Absolutely. So,
and actually, that is actually not my question. Malia asked this. I need to give credit where credit is due. Yeah, she's asking about your evaluation method.
Absolutely. So the evaluation method takes the engineering principles for continuous improvement and puts them onto our lives. So we're going to talk about every hour counting. So writing down what you're doing, journaling, and being intentional with those times, figuring out when it is that you work and when you don't work. The next is valuing that optimized work. So figuring out what you are doing when you are doing the work. Are you being distracted on your phone? Have you picked it up to go check on social media when you're supposed to be focused on data analysis? Then you're going to assess what those expectations are. What you will find, especially if you're a high achieving person, is you have taken on things that are not a part of your job in an attempt to propel yourself forward. Some of those are propelling you forward. They have a lot of value. Others are not. And so really assessing what are those expectations that you lay on yourself and that the organization lays on you. And then it's leveraging small changes. This is the idea from continuous improvement of a Kaizen. It's what can I do in small little increments that will add up and create a major change at the end. That's a really important step, because if you go from 0 to 60, everybody in your organization will notice and they will start to panic. And I can almost guarantee you that you will start to have performance issues that you have never had before. The last piece, and it doesn't fall in evaluation itself, is keep getting the work done. It's important to understand that they pay you for a job. Whether or not you know that you are under contract with someone, you have a contract with them. They pay you a particular amount of money to deliver on a particular business result, and you have to figure out ways to still do that. So it's about how do you build that partnership and that trust to continue to get the work done while you slowly start to improve what's happening. I tell people, remember, it took you a long time to get into the situation you're in with your employer today. Don't expect it to change overnight.
I really like the incremental approach that you're discussing now. This is my perspective as an employer, okay? And it's funny, I think back to Tim Ferriss's 4-hour work week. And if I remember correctly, and it's been a long time since I've read it, I think he took an incremental approach when it came to breaking out of his traditional employment role. But I like your idea. It's like, okay, you've got to figure out like what it is that you do, right? And determine which ones of those are really your core job or other things that you've taken on. And then if I remember correctly, you were also, it's like you can make these incremental changes by let's try this a little bit, then let's try this a little bit, let's try this a little bit, and go to your employer with data. Like you're the engineer, so this is all like perfectly normal and natural for you, but it isn't for everybody else. Instead of going to their employer with, hey, I want a more flexible situation. We're going to make that happen, right? Like we just like make it happen. Instead of going with, hey, you know what? If I could do this way. I could do this way. This thing that we're doing here, we probably don't even really need to do. It's just become busy work for all of us. And this other thing that is this really core thing, I think I could even do better if we could do it this way, right? If you can come to someone with data, I could see that being huge. And this is just my standpoint as an employer. And I appreciate also what you're sharing is, reminding people is that the employer is paying for an outcome, right? They're paying for an outcome, and the outcome isn't X number of hours at a desk. It's it's this result in the business.
That's right.
And you're just going to show people, hey, you can do that in different ways.
Yeah, you turn your emotional needs into data, and data is the language of business, right? I coached a woman who very much wanted to be there to get her daughter on the bus and get her daughter off the bus. That was the most important thing for her. Well, having a discussion with your boss that says, I simply don't want to work in the periods of time that my child is getting on and off the bus, that's a dead-end conversation because there's nothing in it for the employer. But after going through and looking at her schedule, she was able to say, you know what? Most of my clients that I work with, I have some overseas people. So I'm going to work with them between 6 and 7:30 in the morning. Then I'm going to take a break from 7:30 to 8:30 so I can get my child ready and get him to the bus. Then I'm going to be online until 2 o'clock. By the way, that's really when I function the best anyway. And then she came back to her employer and said, and you know what I'll do? After dinner and while we're getting ready for bed, I'll log back on those Asian teammates that I was connecting with in the morning. If they have anything, I'll be able to address it in the evening. Oh. So she was able to say, I can get everything I want. And the employer actually got a benefit because instead of just working from 8 to 4 or 8 to 5, now they actually had her from 6 in the morning until close to 8 in the evening, just with times that were taken out.
Wow. Yeah, so you're describing what's truly a win-win situation. And I'll bet you that employer all along has been kind of going, gosh, I wish I had someone that I could ask to start working at 6 in the morning. But I just don't feel comfortable asking them to do it because it's outside of what we normally think of as the 40-hour thing. And boy, it sure would be great if we had someone that could check those emails at 9 or 10 at night, but I just don't feel comfortable asking my team to do it. So it's really wonderful.
Yeah,
Now,
so you
by the
just
way,
have a business solution to a problem that you already know exists.
wonderful. Now, the comment log, by the way, is blowing up. I'm just here. So I'm going to share some of these comments and some questions. So when Ruth says, hey, Wendy's shifting the paradigm of how we think about work, and as a solopreneur thinking about expanding her team. I need making flex work now more than ever. Melinda says, so happy here to help celebrate your work. Great read, full of pithy details. And then Leslie asked this, do you think the engineering mindset in your process for adapting your work-life balance is applicable for any industry?
That's a great question, Leslie. I do think it is. I think that if you think about these creatives, often you'll say, well, I can't really think about a process. I'm a creative. Well, you do have a process. You just haven't ever thought that you have a process. And the way that I can bring someone in to this process is through journaling. When you think about engineers, we talk in terms of data. We might have a spreadsheet, we might have a log, we might have a checklist. If you talk to people outside of those technical fields, it is very common for people to journal, to document, to make notes. And I offer opportunities for people to write it down. That's all I'm really asking is write it down. And once you put somebody in front of that piece of paper, it's amazing what you'll find. I have a friend named Sarah who is not in a technical field at all. She called me crying. She needed me to be a really good friend because she had decided she was going to quit her job. She couldn't take it anymore and she just needed to quit. And she was calling me because I'm an excellent friend to her and I was just going to be very supportive. And that's not at all what she got from me. What she got from me was a little bit of a lecture about boundaries. And I wouldn't let her quit. I told her we could quit next week, but we can't unquit, so we're not quitting today. I pointed her some of the tools that I have in the book, and I asked her if she could print them out. If you go to the website, makingflexwork.com, there are a lot of free journaling tools, things that will help you to be able to assess your time and follow the eval method. So I pointed her in that direction. And in her emotional state, she admitted that she didn't even know if she had ink in her printer. So I printed it out for her and I put it in her mailbox. This was on a Thursday night. Drove over, stuck it in her mailbox, told her it was there and went home. The next morning I texted her and I said, now, did you start journaling? This was about 8 in the morning. I know she gets up around 6. And she said, no, I didn't. And I said, why? And she said, because I was looking through all of your journaling and I realized I don't have to write it down. I know I've been starting at 6 a.m. every morning and I know I'm still working at 10:30 at night. I'm working before I could put the kids on the bus, after I put them on the bus, while they're at school, once I pick them up, while they're in their activities. I put them to bed and I log back on. She said, I realized I haven't eaten a real meal in 3 days. I'm just grabbing whatever I can in the kitchen as I run through from one place to the other. She says, and I don't think I've gone to the bathroom in 2 days. I don't need to journal. I don't need to quit. I just need to set some boundaries. Now, fast forward, she has journaled. She didn't quit her job. She has actually now been promoted since she started being more intentional in setting those boundaries. It wasn't about how many hours she was working or what she was doing. It wasn't about the type of work that she was doing. It was about making sure that she was present, that she was getting the job done, and then she wasn't letting it take over her entire life.
Wow. All right. I'm going to continue on with another question here because Leslie also asked, how flexible is a flex work style really? And how easy is it to modify your schedule as you go?
That's going to depend on your relationship with your employer. So what I have found is the bigger the company, the less flexible flex is. But it's important to remember that even in those big companies, we call them flexible work arrangements. There are templates and tools for creating what the industry would call an FWA, a flexible work arrangement. And you have to constantly remind people that it is flexible. Otherwise, it would just be called the work arrangement. So if you write the right boundaries around it, you can adjust it as you go. but you have to set some guardrails, and there are some things that are important. Some supervisors are going to say, I don't care when you work. I had a college student work for me who did his best work between 8 p.m. and 2 in the morning. He didn't need to be in any meetings. I just needed heads down focused work. If he wanted to do it while the rest of us slept, I didn't care. I had another person that worked for me that needed to be on the phone with the manufacturing team during the manufacturing day. His job's a lot less flexible than that person who does the heads down focused work. And then obviously, if you are working with equipment, or you're in a laboratory, or you're in front of customers in a live retail setting, it's not nearly as flexible as if you're sitting at home. But all of those have really the opportunity to be more flexible than they are today.
All right. And then another question here. Oh, where'd it go? Oh, yeah, this is a good one from Ruth. As someone who thinks a lot about connection, how do hybrid employees best connect with others?
That's a great question, Ruth. I actually think that hybrid employees are some of the best positioned to build connections as long as they're intentional. Couple of things there. I would always make sure that when you are remote, you take advantage of technology as best you can. If you have the opportunity to turn your camera on, turn it on. You're at work, there are very few reasons for you not to be camera ready. Also, most people spend their time looking at themselves in that bottom corner of the screen. They're not looking at you anyway. I saw an article that said there was a person who wore the same outfit for 30 days on camera to see if anybody noticed, and no one noticed. So don't worry about what you're looking like. Just turn on your camera. Once you become a visual, people are visual from a connection standpoint, they'll start to turn their cameras on. I also think there is a real missed opportunity at the beginning of most corporate meetings and calls. If we were sitting in a conference room, as people straggle into the conference room, there's a lot of chit chat that happens. But because we're in a virtual conference room, everybody just puts themselves on mute and keeps working. If you can really use those few minutes creatively, you can learn a lot about your team. People I work with know that I am going to ask them for something good in their life, personal or professional. I'm going to ask about their children's events. If I'm working with a stay-at-home parent with a small child, I'm going to ask about that parent. I may even pull them onto camera to say good morning. So all of those are things you can do in the remote portion. Now, if you're hybrid and that means you're also going into the office, my suggestion is to think of those times in the office no differently than you would for business travel. You wouldn't just show up on a business trip without an agenda, without knowing what you're trying to do while you're there, who you need to talk to, and what your day looks like. If you're only going to be in the office for a limited period of time, you need to be thinking of that office in the exact same way. Who's going to be in the office when you're there? What do you need from them? How can you build connections? Who are you eating lunch with? Who's in the coffee area? How are you going to navigate the floor plan to make sure you see as many people as possible? It's all about being intentional.
Okay, I think that's genius because, like I said, treating it like it was a travel trip, like you went out of your way to fly across the country to visit that office, you wouldn't waste the opportunities of spending quality time with the right people, right? You would optimize that. So you wouldn't treat it like it's just another work day in the office. And I'm guessing a lot of people do that. The other thing I was going to say is, you know, what's interesting, people complain so much about Zoom, right? Because Zoom fatigue and all of this and not feeling connected. You know, Wendy, you and I have spent substantial time together on Zoom as we've gone through this publishing process. And yet you and I have never met in person.
That's right.
But I can promise you from experience, having met my authors, that we got to know each other over Zoom and then finally met face to face. The meeting the face to face was actually a bit of a letdown, and only from the standpoint of, I always thought, oh, I'm finally going to get to meet them face to face. I'm finally get to meet them in person, when I've really been meeting them face to face all along.
That's right.
It's very different than having just spoken over the phone for the last year and then finally meeting each other.
Yeah, the pandemic, if it gave us nothing, it gave us the ability to have these sorts of conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's the other part, right? It's also forced everybody right into your bailiwick. It's forced everybody right into this flexible work schedule, hybrid work environment, leveraging technology that was basically ready. I mean, that's the funny thing. All this happened when the tech was basically ready to step in. And so here we are. Really, really wonderful.
Yeah, when you make a great point, Everett. When we went in, when our office closed down in 2020, I had a teammate that worked for me that lived on the other side of the country. He was fully remote at the time. And when I was doing check-ins with all of my team, Bill actually said to me, I've never felt more connected. Everybody is now on an even playing field.
That's interesting. Wow. Well, so let me go to this. Is there, if we haven't already touched on it, is there a favorite vignette or story from your book, or was that the one you already described with the gal with the bus wanting to carve out the time for the bus?
Yeah, so there's several stories. The one of the ones that I think is really key to this about from an intentionality standpoint. So I'll share that one with you since we were talking a little about that. I had someone that worked for me who was an excellent heads down focused worker. She was one of those people that would come in early, she would stay late, and you never had to worry about her work getting done on time. When I became her supervisor, she expressed to me that she wanted to get promoted. And so I went and I talked to my predecessor and said, okay, why hasn't she been promoted? And he said, she does great work, but nobody knows who she is. This was years ago, before the idea of hybrid work. And so I went to her and I said, here's our situation. I can get you promoted, but it cannot be on your merits. There's so much more to moving to the next level in this technical job than just performing. And it's who knows what you're doing. So I challenged her to be inefficient for 30 days. I said, you cannot go to the nearest break room. You cannot go on the shortest path to the bathroom. And you cannot have any meetings behind a closed door.
Wow.
Within 30 days, my vice president had come to me and said, why is she not getting promoted? She's in everywhere. Every time I see her great work and she's everywhere. A little adjustment in terms of managing your presence can go a long way in your overall career.
That is genius. How did she react when you told her that? I mean, what was
when I told her what she had to do, she was terrified. Because she was very efficient. She knew how to get to and from places. We all know the best way to get to where we want to go in these buildings we've worked in for years. And she felt like if I can get there and back really fast, I can get my work done. I'm not going to get distracted. I'm not going to have to stop and talk to people. I'm not going to have to do all these things. By the end of the 30 days, I don't think she's ever gone back to having meetings behind closed doors. She really found out that when and how people see you is as important as the work you're doing. I talk about them as mental tally marks. When people see you, they make a little tick. Yep, she was available. When they see you again, yep, she was available. When they see you again, yep, she was available. And all of a sudden they have this whole list of things that say, wow, Wendy is always available. She is where I need her, when I need her. Wow. That can go a long way for careers.
Okay, so here's what I just heard you say. It's not just performance, it's marketing.
Oh, absolutely. And don't tell the engineers that. It scares us.
Right? Because it's like data, performance. I did my job. I'm doing it great. Look how the high quality of my work and how much work I'm getting done. When, quite frankly, if the higher ups aren't noticing it, if they're not noticing you, so this is great. You're just telling me it's about brand awareness. Like, I mean, yes, performance, yes, but brand awareness, and you are the brand.
That's
and
right.
Your brand needs to be seen. So, in advertising, you've probably heard that, that it takes between 7 and 12 touches or exposures to a product before someone may make a buying decision. And over the years, they're saying that that's changed. It's 20 or something like that now. But those same exposures to the brand are exposures of you, the brand, to the other people that you work and interface with. And out of sight, out of mind is as common and sad, I suppose, as this. So, wow, what a terrific example, Wendy. Thank you for sharing that.
No problem. No problem. There is a lot of these little psych tips in the book. I will tell you, there is not a lot of clinical research behind them, but there is 20 years of experience watching what works and what does not work in getting people promoted in organizations.
Well, and I'm sure that's hard, you as the engineer, you know, moving to the experience and, you know, the various little things that have occurred throughout that 20 years rather than data. But we appreciate that you're making that stretch, which writing a book was making a stretch for you, right?
It was.
So, well, Wendy, we are out of time here, but I am just grateful that you have joined us. I'm grateful for all of these people to have joined. Like I said, your comment roll has just blown up.
I can't wait to go back and watch it later and read
all
all
my
the
goodness. Yeah, you'll have to, both in YouTube and Facebook. It's going nuts. So just really appreciate that and everybody that's here. As a reminder for everybody, Wendy's book is available right now. You can pick it up on Amazon today. The Kindle version is at 99 cents, and we certainly encourage you to pick up a copy of that book and learn more about how to make Flex work. By the way, I would recommend this not just for employees, but also for employers who can look for more creative and effective ways to manage a team, right? I mean, it's about that. So Wendy, anything else you want to say before we sign off?
No, I would love to connect with anyone. So go to makingflexwork.com and connect with me there. And I am very excited to be able to help more people get what they want out of their work and their life.
Fantastic. Wendy, thanks so much for having us or for being here, and everyone else for joining us. If you are interested in getting your message out to the world, if you've got a book, if you've got an idea for a book, if you understand even an inkling of what a book could do for your brand or business, reach out. I'd be happy to meet with you. You can go to our website at ignitepress.us and schedule a book consultation with me. We can talk about your book idea and how it can impact your brand. So thank you much for joining us today. On behalf of the Ignite Press team and Wendy, we're grateful that you're here. Take care.